Good morning and welcome. We are so excited to hold our first CCLA Professional Learning Network meeting with all of you. If you haven't already, please put your name, role, and your COE in the chat. Next slide. I would like to introduce some of our CCLA team members here at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. I'm Barb Flores, the CCLA Project Director. We also have Dr. Anisha Munshi, who is the Associate Superintendent for Professional Learning and Instructional Support Division, Karen Larson, who is our Director of Integrated iSTEAM, and she is the CCLA Technology Lead for this project, and Yi Wan, who is the Director of School Climate, Leadership, and Instructional Services, and she is the CCLA Content Lead. Here on the screen, we have some of our fabulous coordinators. We have Ma Bernadette, who is the Assistant Director of iSTEAM, supporting the math curriculum. We have Cheryl, who is the coordinator for English Language Arts, and she will help support the literacy piece. And we have Christina on the far right, who is the CCLA Literacy Coordinator. Next slide. On this slide, we also have a few other fabulous coordinators. So we have Isabel and Arian, and they are our math content specialists here at the Santa Clara County Office of Ed. And then we have Simon Park on the far right, who is our technology lead master, and he will be an amazing support to you with moving forward this year. Next slide. We also want to acknowledge and thank all of our partners in the room today. We have so many talented people supporting the CCLA project, and we look forward to collaborating in this work to support students across California. Next slide. So here we just wanted to get a sense of who in the room and how you're feeling today. So let us know your Apple emoticon for today. Next slide. To create a personal connection across participating county offices of ed and begin to form a network and focused on common work of the CCLA project, we invite you to choose one of the two questions to respond to. We will give you a few minutes to reflect on these questions and then respond. So the first one is, what do you know about the CCLA project? And the second one is, what interests you about this project? Today, we have three main goals for our work together. We will provide a broad overview of the CCLA project for the course of the grant. We will ground our understanding on what learning acceleration is and is not. And we will provide the content area evidence-based priorities so you become familiar with the theme. And we will provide the content area evidence-based priorities so you can become familiar with them. And last, we will provide team time to digest the information in this meeting and collaborate on next steps as a team. And as always, we are always available for any questions that might come up through email, phone, or we can jump on Zoom if necessary. Our collective purpose for the CCLA PLN meetings is to provide a space to network and develop a common and inspired vision for our work together, to impact best practices and the research on learning acceleration. The focus of these quarterly meetings will be on professional learning of the content around learning acceleration and the evidence-based strategies related to specific topics at a given time based on the work we will be doing with schools as we move forward in this project. This table was part of the proposal, and I thought it might be helpful to culminate everything with how the year-to-year rollout will be in general. We wanted to set the stage with grounding ourselves in the scope of work for CCLA over the course of the 5 years. We are in stage 1 right now, laying the foundation with our, the focus of the instruction will be on tier 1, including universal design for learning, culturally sustained pedagogy, and social emotional learning. That will be the focus in developing our online courses that supports our math, literacy, and language in that area. We will also be having 2, possibly 3 community of practices in the spring, depending on the participation that we get from our online courses and our CCLA Summit. In year stage 1, we will also have a one-day CCLA Summit, which again, the focus will continue to stay the same on Tier 1 instruction with universal design for learning, culturally sustaining pedagogy, and social emotional learning, along with the main focus is on learning acceleration in Tier 1 instruction. So we'll be asking and reaching out to all of you to help support doing the one-day conference as well. In stages 2, 3, and 4, we will be focusing our work specifically in school districts. So we'll be going in to school districts to customize the professional learning to support where they are at, but staying true to the online coursework that we're talking about, and also learning acceleration, as that is the main focus of our grant. And additionally, in stages 2, 3, and 4, we will be having monthly COPs, community of practices, that you'll have in your regions to support the customized work that we'll be doing in the upcoming years. And there'll be also a time for job alike, so it'd be all second grade teachers together, or all third grade teachers together, or all coaches together, teachers on special assignment, all administrators together in those years as well, because we want to make sure that we have vertical alignment as well as consistency within a specific job. So we'll have opportunities to support that through coaching and community of practices as well. And then as we exit, we'll be building sustainability in stage 4 that they can leverage and maintain this in stage 5 and beyond. Okay, next slide. For our content coordinators, the big buckets for you this year will be focusing on developing or reviewing the content for the online courses. We will be holding a one-day virtual summit in January. The focus, again, as I shared, will be on learning acceleration during Tier 1 instruction. UDL, SEL, and CSP will also be important, where we can go deeper as it relates to learning acceleration in all 3 of those content areas: math, literacy, and language development. Community of practices will also be in the spring. Since this is our first time doing this, we will use this year's participant data from the summit and the online courses to determine how best to support the educators. It may be that we co-facilitate these, so we will continue to have conversations on implementing community of practices as we get towards that springtime. This is our grounding definition of learning acceleration. I'm going to go ahead and read that so that you all can hear the definition. Accelerated learning strategies are those designated to meet pupils where they are at in their learning and use evidence-based approaches to enable pupils to make strong, rapid progress in their mastery of content and knowledge and skills. These strategies may include individual or small group tutoring or whole class instruction using well-grounded methods with scaffolds and differentiation that meet pupils' learning needs. This is a definition that CCEE, our grantor, has grounded the work in and will continue to be our grounding definition of accelerated learning as we move forward in this work together. Now we are going to read a brief article to gain an overview of what learning acceleration is, and then go into breakout rooms using the final word protocol. While you are reading, select one word, phrase, or idea that you found interesting and want to share with others. In the breakout rooms, one person will share their idea and why they selected it. Then everyone else takes turns sharing their thoughts or reactions to the idea while person number 1 remains quiet. After everyone has had an opportunity to share something related to the idea, the person number 1 has more than one, the person number 1 has one more opportunity to share any final thoughts or reactions from the group sharing. To move things along, when each person shares, have a timekeeper and try to stay to 1 minute. So also it might be a good idea to have maybe a second or a third backup for the quote or phrase or what you would like to share in case someone else has used that as well. So we'll go ahead and pause there for a minute. as we put you into breakout rooms to read the article and then do the final word protocol. Okay, so as we transition to the breakout rooms, when we return from the breakout rooms, we will be going into the gallery view with all the participants who attended the meeting that day. So we will be transitioning from this view to the gallery view. So you'll see the participants who attended that session during the day when you return from breakout rooms. A little bit, I'd like to kind of hear from everyone about what you guys discussed in the breakout room. So what surprised you about learning acceleration? And so what we'll do is we're going to do this raise hand protocol. So you'll use the icon at the reaction at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand, and we'll be just taking turns from there. But take a minute and think about what surprised you about learning acceleration, or what can you share out from your breakout room that you had. Go ahead and raise your hand. When I have a few hands raised, we'll go ahead and start. I love to hear that there's a great conversation. Can't wait to hear about it. Okay, go ahead and use the reaction at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand. When I get 2 more hands raised, this is a great time to be participating with everybody. Okay, Joseph, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you. So I think the thing that, if I was to say surprised me, is having not really considered the importance of the family involvement. And so we had a really wonderful discussion about family involvement, about the importance of aligning messages, about, I think that really aligns also with that whole child, dealing with the whole child, which was another conversation. And then another thing that someone had mentioned, Dr. Solomon, was also just the partnerships. She'd even mentioned the partnership, say, with our special ed teachers who have been doing some of this work and who might offer a great partnership. So I think that also led me to be surprised to be thinking about where are those partnerships that we might want to leverage. And one of them being the family, and the other potentially being people who've been doing this work and might be able to speak to it.
Yeah, great. That's great. And I appreciate you bringing the family up. The family piece isn't technically part of the grant per se, but when we get into that customized support in year or next year and beyond, that is something that we can always embed into the work as well. It is true. It is a partnership with everybody, that whole wraparound services for the whole child. Okay, great. Don't forget, use the reaction down at the bottom to raise your hand. I see all these great things of great conversations, great discussions in the chat. So go ahead and please raise your hand, share those great conversations. We want to hear from you because not everyone was in your breakout room. Okay, Diana.
So what pleasantly surprised me was this asset-based perspective that the whole document kind of takes, right? This idea that we're going to look at the child as a whole, that we're going to include parents, that we are going to focus on teachers, right? And helping them regain their professionalism again. So I really, really appreciated all of that because I think those are the things that have been missing in a lot of the past work that we've done. And like Anna said in our group, it's a systemic approach. So when many of us are working in this way, we will be able to see some progress, I think. So that's really exciting.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. That is one of the key things about the work that we'll be doing. It will be helping support our students and supporting the educators in those areas. And it is key. And that's what's going to make our grant and the work that we do very different and more focused on the learning acceleration. And so we want to keep that messaging and keep it going strong. Thank you for sharing. Okay, any other takers? We have a quiet group today. Well, let's see. We had a similar conversation. Love the asset-based approach. It's about changing our mindset and regarding students and teaching. Agreed. The mindset piece, which is definitely a piece to our grant, is shifting that mindset. And I think that is one of the critical pieces to make sure, and it kind of goes along with the asset base, that our students are, everyone has can be successful in the work that they're doing. Mackenzie, thank you for raising your hand.
Okay, I'm actually getting to hang out with Joseph, so I hope you can hear me through his computer. That way we don't have that weird echo. But I love that word surprise, but I actually just want to also use the idea of affirmations. I think all of us were like, yeah, like we've been saying this for a long time. I know Joseph and I had mentioned that kind of before we went into breakout rooms, like, man, this is good. This is what I think a lot of teachers really want, but I like how it's broken down into process and language that we can actually use to be more intentional. I think we have some teachers who are doing some amazing things, but they don't have a name for it. And so I think what we see here is naming a lot of things, such as supporting that whole child, bringing in family and cultural backgrounds, like how can we be asset oriented, focusing on what students can do, how can we teach what we need to teach, but then support and scaffold up and not scaffold down. So I think the language that we can use with teachers to name the feelings that they had is really exciting. Like I said, affirmation, and it could definitely connect with just that nice surprise.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Thank you for sharing that. I agree. Like I said, some of this isn't necessarily new, but it's like lifting it forward and bringing it to the forefront and being able to make it visible for our educators out there in the field. Absolutely. Great. Thank you. And Dr. Solomon.
Yes, good morning. In our group, we had an excellent conversation. And one of the things we talked about in terms of the mindset, it's that support in terms of making that shift. So some tools that might be helpful. So I dropped in the chat just a couple of things that I'm putting on my special education hat. We're talking about acceleration, I guess, according to my understanding, where we're not remediating, but we're trying to thoughtfully plug in where the gaps are so that students can continue to move forward. So those two documents, many of you may know them, some may not. I think they're very underutilized, in my opinion, but they do support this conversation about what do you actually need to look at to be able to understand what students need to know and be able to do as relates to demonstrating the standard. So one of the key columns in that document at the end, when it starts at grade level 3, and it goes through 11th, are essential understandings, which really kind of gets you directly to the targeted skills that students need to be able to demonstrate. So I just like that document, and I promised the group that I was involved in terms of this conversation to share the document. So far I have math and ELA, and I'm looking for science in GSS right now. So I'm hoping that would be okay to drop that in when I find it. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I think our grant focus is more for math, literacy, and language.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we need the NGSS at this point.
Oh,
but,
okay, that's fine. Yes. No
yeah,
problem.
yeah. But thank you so much for sharing those resources. That's we always love to have extra resources. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. And actually, it's a perfect segue into the next slide. So one of the key takeaways today, as you were just sharing, is that learning acceleration is not the same thing as remediation. And I think that's a key thing that we need to emphasize when we're working with our teachers and coaches and everyone in the field. Really, what is that distinction between acceleration and remediation? And really making sure that we focus on acceleration and we're educating everyone on acceleration. And that's like our elevator speech when we're going forward, right? So that piece in itself is what makes our grant and the work that we will be doing over the course of the next few years different from any other professional learning that they've attended or any other things that will be able to support what they're doing in the classroom. So everyone needs to have access. So the big thing about learning acceleration is for all students. It's not just that select few. like would be in with remediation, right? And so it's for all of our students. Everyone needs to have access to their grade level tier 1 instruction, but focuses on priorities for that grade level. And then we have to build that bridge for students by looking at what are the precursors to that content, to that specific area of focus, right? What do students need to know? Like, for example, to do multiplication, you need to be able to know addition, right? And so what's that precursor? What do they need to know prior to that? How do we build that bridge with scaffolds and differentiation prior to, so that they can access that content and those essential skills? And so that's very different than reteaching all the skills from the previous grade level so that they can catch up students after the fact, right? So that's that differentiation. And so that's one of the key pieces that we want to make sure we focus in on. It's just in time support instead of that after the reteaching, and holding high expectations for all. Okay, go ahead, go on to the next slide. So as I shared, another piece of the grant that we'll be embedding in everything that we do is universal design for learning, social emotional learning, and culturally sustaining pedagogy. And so many of you are probably familiar with these terms or may have some familiarity of what that looks like and sounds like in the classroom. But as we kind of were discussing too, I think we always, we have this a little broader understanding of, or more depth of understanding of these practices, and we need to make sure that they get elevated in the classroom as well. So today, what I did is I grabbed 5 different quotes from education research to kind of bridge that connection. So I'd like you to do, what we're going to do for this is we're going to, I would like you to read each of the quotes, and then in about 3 minutes or after we read the quotes, what I'm going to do is we're going to think about like which one does that connect to? Does it connect to UDL? Does it connect to SEL? Does it connect to CSP, culturally sustaining pedagogy? And we'll do like a waterfall chat with each one. There might be some that connect to more than one. So just to kind of go through that process. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to read each of the quotes. Okay, so as you're thinking about those, so what we're going to do, if you're not familiar with a waterfall chat, so the way a waterfall chat works is that you'll type in the chat As we go through each one, we'll type in the chat, but then you don't hit enter. So on the count of three, I'll hit enter, or I'll say hit enter or go, and then you'll go ahead and hit enter. Okay. So for number one, views the culture, language, experiences, and learning modalities of each student as an asset in the classroom, not a deficit. So go ahead, don't hit enter, but type the number in the chat of what, or excuse me, not the number. Type either UDL, SEL, or CSP, and let us know what you think that is. And I'm going to, the count of three, you'll hit enter. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. What is number one? A lot of people are saying CSP, UDL, CSP. Yep. So one of the pieces for sure, like the cultural piece and the language piece is definitely going for culturally sustaining pedagogy, talking about different learning modalities and understanding that definitely connects to UDL, and then students as assets in the classroom is definitely culturally sustaining pedagogy. Okay. Number 2, understanding culture is a prerequisite for learning how to respect differences while also recognizing the connections that unite us. That's that pink one in the middle. So number 2, is it UDL, SEL, or CSP? 1, 2, and 3. CSP, that's definitely cultural, exactly. Because we're talking about understanding culture, which is a big one. I think we talked about that after the breakout room, but just having that understanding and looking at students as assets and what they bring to the classroom, super huge. Okay, number 3, it is not a checklist of things to do. It's a new lens for thinking about everything you do. Is that UDL, SEL, or CSP? 1, 2, and 3. Yep, UDL, I see UDL and SEL, a lot of those in there, yep. So it's definitely UDL 100%. A lot of people feel UDL is a checklist, but I also can see where SEL comes into play because it's a new lens for thinking about everything we do. We really need to attend to the social emotional learning of our students in doing this work. Absolutely 100%. Okay, number 4, teaching compels educators to consider multiple and varied options for what students will learn, how they will make sense of what they learn, and how they will demonstrate mastery. Is that UDL, SEL, or CSP? 1, 2, and 3. That's great. So a lot of you put UDL in there, and that's absolutely true. That's what I was thinking when I do it. It does connect to CSP as well. But to me, 100%, it's definitely the varied options for what students will learn, how they'll make sense of it as expert learners, and how they'll demonstrate mastery. Those totally connect to UDL, 100%. Okay, and then the last one is, this is a broad term referring to how students regulate their emotions, communicate with others, use compassion and empathy to understand the needs of other people, build relationships, and make good decisions. UDL, SEL, or CSP? 1, 2, and 3. Yep, 100% SEL. That's talking about their emotions and being able to regulate those. Great. Okay, that was fun. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, so basically I just wanted to kind of capture, right? We talked about learning acceleration. We want to ground everyone on that same understanding of what is learning acceleration, what do we need to be focusing in for our grant. And along with that, this tier 1 instruction, all these pieces, UDL, SEL, and CSP are so critical to the work that we want to make sure that in everything that we do, we're bridging those connections to each of the kind of guiding principles of each of those 3 pieces, right? So just thinking, I mean, we're not gonna fit every piece of UDL into one lesson or one focus area, but what pieces do connect? What pieces can we connect for SEL? What pieces can we connect for culturally sustained pedagogy? But we always want to lift those up to the forefront to make sure, I think, as we were saying earlier, it's not so much that educators don't know some of these pieces out in the field. I think that's overwhelming just to look at this framework and how do I fit it all in? So like one of the roles that we want to do is be able to make it so that educators can make meaning of all these pieces that are essential to good instruction, to accelerate learning and make it easy for them to bridge those connections themselves. Okay. Next slide. So this is the content piece. So we drafted our evidence-based strategies and content area focus based on, this is part of the grant. We kind of summed it up in this document here. And so you'll see for tier 1 instruction, so one of our evidence-based strategies is going to be tutoring and small group instruction. And we'll get into tutoring and small group instruction. That's going to be more in year 2, or we're in year 2. So next year, 2023 and 24 and beyond, that's where we're going to really be developing more of that, like how do we do high impact tutoring and small group instruction as our evidence-based strategy to really support that work. Then in tier 1, what we did was, this is going to be focusing for our universal instruction. This is for our online coursework that we're doing and the work of this year. And we'll continue to spiral through the years with this, but this is our focus area. So for math, we leveraged the What Works Clearinghouse practice guides because those, some of the pieces in those showed strong evidence. But again, remember, we're focusing on evidence. So we chose the ones that seem to leverage or need the most leverage to accelerate learning for students in general. So for math, we chose mathematical language, math representation, and then word problems. So we know if our students don't have that language for math to be able to build those connections and those routines, they'll struggle. We know being able to represent mathematical problems is also critical to being able to understand math. And then word problems builds in that comprehension piece as well. Do they really understand what's being asked in those word problems? So that's kind of in the math. For literacy, the focus area is going to be around foundational skills. So about foundational skills at the primary, foundational skills across the K-5, 6, and going into word analysis, because we know that if students don't, there's that progression, like thinking of areas, phases of word recognition. There's the phases that students will go through. And so we want to make sure that if they don't go through all those phases and they don't understand and have that solid foundation of understanding through the science of reading, if they don't understand that, then they're not going to be able to learn how to read effectively, right? And then we also know reading comprehension and fluency is a critical piece to just being able to learn any content area. It connects to word problems, it connects to language, it connects to all of it. So really focusing on those key areas. And then for language development, we're really looking at academic language and how to integrate oral and written language. We know academic language is not a new term. It's not something that's been around, but how do we really look at that, the leverage, accelerate learning? And how do we integrate the oral and written English language across the content areas to help support and leverage acceleration? So those are super critical as well. And then we'll go into the tier 2 and tier 3 support, which is what we'll be doing more in that customized approaches in 23, 24 and beyond to kind of fine tune and really focus in on those areas. So the other piece to it is when you look at the What Works Clearinghouse documents. So I don't know if you can transition, we'll click on one of those links there and then to the document. And then, so we connected to very specific areas. So you'll see like this document on foundations, I think is 100 and some odd pages. So we're not going to be looking at the full 100 and some odd pages. We're going to be looking at just recommendation 3. You'll see that at the top, because that has one of the areas it shows strong evidence of impact. So that's kind of the grounding work, is that recommendation. That's kind of going to be kind of the grounding work that will focus area specifically for foundation skills. So we've also narrowed it as well. And that's the same whether it's math representation or mathematics or language development or reading comprehension, any one of those. So each one connects to a specific recommendation, and that will be the focus area. Like here's another one here for comprehension. We did recommendation 2 and focusing on comprehension strategies, and that will go across all K-12. It's applicable for all K-12, and we've got a couple of guiding documents. But so you'll have access to this document if you're like me. I know if I give it to you now, you're going to be clicking away to see what that's at. So I am going to give it to you at the end of the presentation today, and I'll put it on the schedule as well. But that'll be a key area for whatever your focus area is to kind of connect with. So what are the kind of focus areas in each of the contents to that we'll need to ground our work in. That's a nice area to start with. Okay, next slide. So this is next steps. I know I've heard from a number of people that they're very eager to get started and do different things. So that's why I really wanted to connect that content piece in there. So one of the things that you could potentially do is really read the content sections from the What Works Clearinghouse one-page summary, that kind of area to kind of wrap your head around the content that we're going to be working on for this grant. Then also just be thinking about what that could look like and sound like with content writing for the online courses. We will be reaching out to you. We do have a frame for those of you who are new to the call. We do have an outline and a template for the online courses. So it's very guided and specific, and then we'll just take the content and put it all together to make it sense and make meaning, and including the UDL SEL. And then also be thinking about, like, once you've read the What Works Clearinghouse pieces that relate to your role, then what could that look like and sound like as a summit session, right? Because we will be leveraging all of you, as well as bringing in outside speakers to support the content sessions for the CCLA Summit in January. Again, with the focus being in on learning acceleration, Tier 1 instruction with UDL, SEL, and CSP. So those are just some potential next steps to be, like I know a lot of you have been asking, what could you do? So those are some of the pieces that you'll be able to kind of think about and start working on. Next slide. And as promised, we are going to have some team time here. And so we have a recording document. So we just want to have you thinking about, so after today's session, like what are you thinking about? How is your expertise? How could we leverage your expertise in that specific areas? Also, we want to hear from you. What are some lingering questions? We respond to questions in a frequently asked questions way, and or we bring them back to the next session. I want to hear about what you're thinking for any proposed future topics at the meetings and next steps. Okay, so we're going to give about 15 minutes of team time. I'm going to go ahead and place your team time documents into the chat. So everyone has those. Okay, and then I believe, Sung, are the breakout rooms set up by, so you have breakout rooms that you'll be able to join based on your county office of education. And Santa Clara County can go ahead and stay in the main room. And so we will go into the breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. So you have 15 minutes of team time. We always like to provide that. So right in the moment after hearing the content, you'll be able to hear or think about how that you can make connections to the work that you're doing. Okay. I said, I kind of took a peek at a few of your questions that you had. So specifically some of the lingering questions, just so you have some ideas. So we will be looking at data for this, and we'll talk more about that, like because formative assessment, diagnostic assessment, like all that will play a role in learning acceleration, being able to meet the students where they're at to get that information. So that will be coming up. Regarding a website, our CCLA, the SCCOE, CCLA will be creating a website for our project. And so what our goal for that will be is to have the website link to each county office website so that everyone will have that access. And then what we put on the website, so we're going to have like a general frame and outline. We've already have some ideas, but we will also build or build in, like the collaboration with all the regional hubs to see what else we may or may not want to put on those websites. So it will be a thought partnership with that. And then you'll be able to see what you can also connect into yours. Another one, that was just one more. The questions around the grade levels in certain content areas and the surveys. So we will build the content development teams based on the surveys. If there's anything else you'd like to add or share with your team, because I know there's some new members on this team, please absolutely contact Yi-Wan as our content lead. Her contact information will be on the slide at the end. So you can go ahead and contact her and let her know if there's a change or something specific that you want to focus in on with the grade spans. We've got some ideas of how to put it together, but it's definitely going to be in partnership with all of you for that. And the example of the course and like the rough draft of the acceleration piece and all of that, that will, so if you're doing the content courses and signing, there's two answers to that. So if you're doing the content development piece and or the review focus group piece, because each content course will go through a focus group piece, we will be sharing the example. We do have an example of the template, the outline. We're going to share an example of what the platform looks like, so you'll understand like how we can engage educators with they're called blocks, but it's like sorting questions, like surveys, question, videos and whatnot. So all of those pieces related to the course and the work that we're doing, the example, all of that. Once we, the MOUs are established, then we will go ahead and have like an introductory meeting for all of those folks. So related to the content areas, so that you'll see all of that when we get there. And then the twofold is our next PLN meeting, which is, it's in November. I don't have the exact date, it's on the slide here. But at the next PLN meeting, we will be, by then, we'll be far along with the courses from everybody. And then we will have breakout rooms for like math, to really look at math, breakout room for literacy to break out, or so there's those pieces there. And then we'll also have, prior to that, we have a general learning acceleration course that we've been working on as well. So you'll be able to see all of that. That's going to be the focus. We want to kind of ground our understanding this time in learning acceleration, kind of give you an idea of like the content focus areas, and then take that to the next meeting and go deeper with the content areas in our next meeting. So I hope I've answered some of those questions for you regarding that. Okay, go on to the next slide. So I always like to open with a welcome and close with an optimistic closure. Those are pieces that relate to SEL, which is how, like, just one way to be able to infuse these things in the work. And I feel strongly about modeling what we want to share with educators, and then they can lift some of these and use them themselves. So for our optimistic closure today, in the chat, or you can unmute, what is one thing you will commit to doing prior to our next PLN meeting in November, based on what was discussed today during today's content meeting and with your team? So go ahead and pause, and again, you can either unmute and share, or you can write it in the chat. But we would like everyone to participate in this, because what's really important, one is it's that accountability piece that we want our students to do in the classroom, that we want us to do as leaders. And then also it's like when you kind of write something down, it kind of builds a little bit more like internal accountability as well. So I see a lot of the people, let's see. Oops, my chat is going here. So great. So it looks like a lot of people are going to get into What Works Clearinghouse, recommendations specific to their content. The article was a good place to build that foundation for everybody. They're going to work with their teams on this work. Yeah, great. It looks like there's a lot of good things that folks are going to be doing between now and the next time. Okay, and the next slide. So these are upcoming meeting dates. We do, like I said, our next one is in November. It is November 10th. And so the meetings will always be from 9 to 11. We'll put the slide deck on the schedule that I shared with you earlier today, similar to what we did today. I'll also add in the What Works Clearinghouse documents, and actually I'll link that in just a second. One of the other things, so please mark your calendars. These dates are extremely important for all of us to be together, because this is our time and space to build our community across the state with this work, as well as hear voices from all of you to collaborate and do this work. So we want to make sure there's representation from all county offices of ed during this time. In order to really build that consistency and hear everyone's voice throughout this work that we'll be doing. The other piece I wanted to share with you, I know at our CCLA leadership meeting, we talked about the logo on the screen right there in the bottom corner. I forgot to mention it when we opened up today. We're very excited to say that we landed on a logo that was approved by CCEE. One of the things that we just need to remember is that whenever we put out our information for California Collaborative for Learning Acceleration, we also bring in the CCEE logo that was on the original slide. And then you can also add in your county office logo as well, if you'd like. And then we will be developing slide deck templates, a letterhead that has all our COEs on it, and whatnot. So there's still some more to come, but we're just very excited to be able to say that we've landed on a logo. So next slide. And then as I shared, here's Yuan's contact information for the content. She's our content lead. So if you do have any extra questions regarding the content, please feel free to reach out to her. Erin Larson is our technology lead. So anything related to the website or our Articulate Rise platform for our online content courses, please feel free to reach out to her. And I'm overseeing the entire project. And so any general questions related to any of the above, feel free to always reach out to me as well, or include me in the conversation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you so much for your active participation today. Next time that we'll see you is in November, or some of you will be in November, and or when we start developing the content courses, if you're part of that team. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday and short, crazy week that we had.